10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
This is Diane Andrews in Black and White. The issues you don't want to talk about. The arts and entertainment you need to know. And now here's your host, Diane Andrews.
Hello, I'm Diane Andrews. I'm your host of Diane Andrews in Black and White. Thank you for being here, audience. I appreciate it. Thank you in the state of Louisiana for watching us, since we're the largest statewide program in Louisiana and on YouTube. In fact, I just made a phone call a couple of weeks ago to Baghdad, Iraq, and we have people over there who watch the show in India. We have quite a following around the world on YouTube, so I appreciate your viewership. Today we're going to do a show with the Chief of Police of Baton Rouge. Thanks for being here, Chief Dabney.
Thank you.
Last time he was on here, I thought I owed him one because he didn't get too much chance to talk. We had one guest who monopolized most of the show, so he was gracious enough to come back today. We're doing a show today about visas, about terrorism in and out of America. How do these terrorists get into America? As we know, in San Bernardino, there was Malik I'm probably mispronouncing her name, Malik, and Saeed Farouk, her husband. She came in on what's called a K-1 visa, and that's a fiancé visa where they come into America because they're getting married. I'm going to get on the line a person who was over the passport office, a diplomat in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. For you all to know, 15 of the 19 hijackers of the 9/11 were from Saudi Arabia. 2 of those had expired visas. So it just shows our country could beef it up a little bit on keeping up with the 500,000 people in America today with expired visas. And then the chief is going to talk to us about what has happened over the years and what tactics, law enforcement is taking to make us safer, and give us any tips of things we should look for, because I hear the FBI director always say, see something, say something.
That's correct.
So tell us what we're doing in Baton Rouge or all over the country.
Well, since Columbine was when it actually took off, and school shootings or mass shootings became prevalent, and law enforcement had to come up with a way to address these. Over the years, our tactics have changed dramatically. With every incident that we've had, our officers, our tactical officers, the federal government, state agencies, we've pretty much all come together and tactically worked out plans. That way, every jurisdiction or every city, every state has a way of dealing with mass shootings. Now, it is incumbent upon the cities themselves to take this training, to use this training, and to train their people. And in the city of Baton Rouge, we have 9 different agencies that all are housed within the city limits of Baton Rouge. And with that, all of these agencies have come together. We do scenario trainings every year where we all get together.
Does
we
that
work
mean,
on
Chief, like a state trooper and sheriff's department? You're chief of police. Who would some of the other ones be?
You have LSU Police Department, you have Baton Rouge Community College Police Department, Southern Police Department, the Constable's Office, the Baton Rouge Police Department, the East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff's Office, Louisiana State Police, and then we also have DPS Police, which does all the security for the state capitol.
Oh, okay. That's Department of Public Safety.
That's correct.
DPS. Oh,
They're
okay.
a piece of the Louisiana State Police.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yes.
In fact, Colonel Edmondson is going to be on my show. I've talked to him, but we couldn't get the dates because you and I and Colonel was and Mayor was supposed to do something. I think he's in Mardi Gras having fun up in Washington D.C. and couldn't make, because we want to do something on hate versus terror.
Yes.
Crimes.
Yes.
Yeah. So you all coordinate? Do you all meet the 9 agencies here in Baton Rouge?
Yes, we all get together. Last year we held a big scenario training, and what we do in a scenario training is we make everything as possible realistic as we can, from the call-out procedures to everybody getting on scene, the EMS, the fire department working with us, and what will happen also with the city parish, working together with assets and things that we would need when that happens. So we're making sure that everything that we're going to need in the case of a mass shooting, we have trained, we have worked together, and we know what we need to do. Now, of course, you can't plan for everything,
right.
but at least we have a basic fundamental plan of what would happen, and we work on that plan every year.
Like in any kind of emergency, do you all get involved like during Katrina? And that just was a total failure of every department and every person involved in Katrina. When the mayor tells you to go to the Superdome, and we know the first thing in Louisiana is going out is the electricity, and we have no generators in there.
Right.
I mean, so who's watching some of the watchers? Because which we have a lot of hurricanes and other kind of disasters here. You all get involved in that too, don't you?
That's correct. Last year, Mayor Holden sent every department head within the city to a training scenario place that's put on by the United States Fire Department training center. And what we did is we all went, and it was kind of it was handled just like a scenario would happen. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to be thrown. And then all of a sudden, they call you, and this is what's happened. And all of the department heads within the city, from DPW to Homeland Security, police, fire, EMS, all of us were together in one room, and we had a mock scenario that happened.
This is good to hear.
It was very good training for all of us to get to know each other, to be able to have that communication gap. And we had the mayor there. So the mayor was responsible for his parts, we were responsible for ours. So it gave us a real good opportunity to work together in a scenario. So it's constant training that we're doing every year so that something like what happened with Katrina doesn't happen again.
Really?
Everybody was unprepared for that. We'd never had anything like that before.
Right.
And I think we learned from that. And
But
I think the city
2 days before, I remember, because my electricity, I live in Baton Rouge, went out for 3 weeks during Katrina. I had no electricity here. But 2 days before, I remember they saying this could be the biggest one ever came through. I think that was, you talk about communications, I think some of that between our governor and maybe the mayor, because Kip and the Mayor Holden, he was on, we did a show, and it ended up 90% on Katrina. And basically, the mayor at that time of New Orleans, Ray Nagin, called him and said, hey, I'm in Texas, here's the number. You all handle this. So Baton Rouge, Lafayette, and Houston, were handling all of Katrina because our mayor, their mayor down there, who's now in jail in New Orleans, told them, I'm gone.
Right.
And he just took no responsibility. People wanted to put it on Bush and the administration, but I don't even think they knew what was going on. If your people at the bottom are not communicating, our governor was on TV crying at the time, and so it was just a lot of miscommunication.
It's a lot of miscommunication when you have to deal with local government, with state government, and federal government, and everybody needs something from everybody else. So by going through that, we have now worked out those issues with the Office of Homeland Security, which now handles the federal portions of it and the state portions. So that really helps local departments and agencies to be able to communicate and get what they're going to need in emergency situations.
Because Homeland Security was not that big before.
No, it wasn't.
9/11, and it didn't even exist. I don't think before 9/11.
Really didn't even exist.
Yeah, before 9/11.
That's correct.
I think Bush was the one who kind of developed that administration and Congress and everything developed the Office of Homeland Security, and now when we see the color codes yellow, orange, alerts you on what's going on in the world and if there's a dangerous threat to you wherever you are, to us wherever we are. So. You were appointed by Holden, Chief Deputy. So how long have you been here now?
3 years now.
3 years.
Yes.
So now, since Chief, Mayor can't run again, I don't think, for mayor, can he?
No.
Isn't he term limited
he's term
now?
limited
And he ran for lieutenant governor, but to our dismay, he didn't make it. So do you think, what would be your next step, or things you'd like to do? Or the next mayor may keep you and you'd like to stay, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
It just, I guess, kind of depends on the new mayor and
that
what
was like
direction
with
they want to
Edmondson.
go
He was
in.
waiting to see what the new governor was going to do before he knew whether he would be keeping his job over at the state troopers. So is there anything, like Comey, the FBI director, said, see something, say something? What would you tell us that we need to do to prepare for any kind of emergency?
Well, the same thing. I mean, definitely if you see something, say something. A lot of times people see things, they don't say nothing because they don't think it matters.
Right.
And then come to find out later that it would have mattered tremendously.
Yes, San Bernardino, the neighbor of Farouk and Malik in San Bernardino, said that she saw them every night working on something in their garage, and they were getting boxes flown in. Now, their cousin, who is a Hispanic guy, it was somebody's married their cousin or something, and he was the one who got them the semi-automatic rifles. I understand that they were legal.
That's correct.
The guns were legal that they had, but it still didn't make a difference. They killed 14 people in San Bernardino 2 months ago, as we know, in California. I'm going to get a person who wrote a book called Visas for Al Qaeda, because we're talking about how do some of these people get in here, and why are the visas 500,000 people still here, and what are we doing anything to make this visa system any better, that we can keep up with K-1 visas, which is what San Bernardino people were on. I'm going to get Michael Springman on the line, and he's going to talk a little bit about what he saw in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, when he was there, before they fired him. And he'll tell you they fired him because he whistle blew on the government. That's a tough thing. We're doing a show later in a week or so on whistleblowers.
Hi.
Hi, Mike. How are you doing?
Okay.
Okay, I just introduced you and showed everybody your book. In fact, I'm holding it up now. You'll see when you watch the show on YouTube. I just talked to the chief of police of Baton Rouge. He's sitting here with me on some things that we're doing, you know, in the governments to make sure that we're safe and we're ready for any kind of emergency. Now, you are an attorney, and you're a practicing attorney now in Washington, D.C. You went to American University, Catholic American University, and you went to Georgetown.
That's right.
Now, you became a diplomat in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, which is where 15 of the 19 hijackers in the 9/11 were from. But you weren't there then. You left in '89.
That's right.
Okay, so tell us what you whistle blew on the government about the processes we're doing. Tell me why, and what you think we could do better, especially with the visa system, since we have 500,000 people in America who are here on visas who are expired. And 2 of the 15 hijackers' visas had expired. 2 of the Saudi Arabian people.
Sure. So basically, when I was in Jeddah, I was complaining about being ordered to issue visas to people who are not qualified. They essentially didn't show any strong ties to either Saudi Arabia or to their own country that would compel them to come back from the United States once they had come here. And I had complained to the head of the consular section, the consul general, the counselor for consular affairs in Riyadh, and to the Bureau of Consular Affairs in Washington, D.C. It wasn't until I was out of the Foreign Service that I found out that these people I was objecting to were basically recruits for the Mujahideen, essentially terrorists for the war in Afghanistan against the then Soviet Union.
But they were on our side, right? The Mujahideen at that time was on our side. I mean, Osama bin Laden and everybody trained him. Osama bin Laden worked for us first, didn't he?
That's correct. Yeah, he was an agency asset.
And I think that because he's from Saudi Arabia himself, and he came from a very wealthy family or something.
Oh, yeah.
He was from Saudi Arabia because he's no longer with us. But so in the Middle East, it's very complicated. And I'll say this, in reading your book, which is really good when I read it, because I stayed up to 6 a.m. one night. I started at 3 and I was reading it. And everything seemed to pinpoint in the Middle East, to me, of what we're doing was to keep Russia out. Because keep them from dominating oil, I guess, in the Middle East. Because if Russia dominates oil, we're in trouble.
Well, that's part of it, to keep the Russians out of the Middle East, but it's also to ensure that America can control the Middle East, that it's sufficiently divided, that there is no strong economy, no strong government that would oppose American interests or Israeli interests, and which would enable the United States to manipulate much more easily a weak government, a government dependent on foreign aid, on foreign assistance of whatever kind. And this is the one problem we have. Instead of letting the Middle East go its own way and letting the people choose their own governments, we decide we're going to choose it for them, and we generally choose wrongly.
Well, Michael, I have to say now, that's controversial. That's kind of your opinion on that, you believe that we're in the Middle East to control them. Is it because of the oil?
Well, oil is part of it, and then the other thing is simply influence. Oil had been one of the mission reporting plans when I was in Saudi Arabia, but it's essentially control. The United States tried to control Afghanistan, tried to control Yugoslavia, and succeeded in destroying the country. Tried to control Iraq and succeeded in destroying the country. And the same for Libya and now for Syria.
Just did Libya.
And it's more than opinion. It's basically my personal experience based on the 9 years I was abroad. based on my 2 degrees in foreign affairs and based on careful observation and research.
So what do you think? Well, I don't think we can solve that problem ever, but what do you think we can do with the visa system to make it better? Like the K-1 visa, you know, they ask you, you say it's very complicated. Explain. I brought a passport with me for people who have never seen a passport before. The passport is what allows you to go out of the country. You need one when you go to Europe and other places. But inside the passport, it's going to have some visas stamped on here, where you stamp what country you're going in, and that's the visa that country is allowing you to come into their country. And you have to explain to that country why you're here. So in that part, that's what you were doing. You were giving the visas to Al-Qaeda, the title of your book, to come to America, to go wherever they needed to go, and you questioned some, and then you got fired.
Exactly right.
And you said, I think before you were there, the other person got fired too, who was in Jeddah. Over a diplomat, didn't she, or didn't stay there long?
No, my predecessor in Jeddah was Greta Holtz, and she worked with the intelligence services before allegedly joining the State Department. And I was told by the American ambassador at the time, Walter Cutler, that she was a great troublemaker. Yet I'm out of the Foreign Service, and Greta Holtz is now American ambassador to Oman on the Persian Gulf.
Well, maybe it paid to be a troublemaker. But they thought you were a troublemaker and they fired you, but she was a woman, so maybe it was different with her, right? I don't know. What kind of troublemaker was she versus you?
Well, supposedly she was denying visas to people and making problems for the embassy in Riyadh. And I spent 45 minutes with Cutler at the time before I went out to Jeddah, and he was telling me all of these difficulties she was creating. And I kept saying to myself, he's telling me something, but I don't know what it is that he's telling me. And when I asked the desk officer, the fellow who followed events in Saudi Arabia for the State Department, about this afterwards, he just said, oh, I don't know. Cutler was just a queer duck. But the former head of the consular section, a guy who's now retired and living in Florida, had written me and said that he got all of this pressure to issue visas to unqualified applicants, and he took early retirement rather than fight with him about it.
Maybe easier. But he was at the age where he could take early retirement.
Yeah.
So I suggest people, if you're looking to understand what, from Mike's perspective, and it was good, is going on in the Middle East, he has all kind of footnotes. He's been away from there a long time, but he references so many other books and other authors in this book telling you what their perspective is on what's going on in the Middle East. And we do know the Mujahideen, that's been pretty much proven, was a force that America was behind, and they still believe that some of these other forces are behind. As I said on another call earlier, Camp Bucca is where Baghdadi, the leader of ISIS, was, and that's when he started praying with people every day, and then voila, here comes ISIS right out of Camp Bucca, one of our prison camps in Iraq. But if you can't understand what people are saying and they're praying together, and Muslims need to pray 5 times a day is their religion, then I guess those are the kinds of things that happen. I just spoke with someone on a show last week who is from Baghdad, Iraq. And that's what we were discussing. But real quickly, tell us about the K-1 visa, the one that Malik's wife ended up getting, because she was from Pakistan but lived in Saudi Arabia, so she got her visa from Jeddah too, I think, didn't she?
No, she, as I understand it, got it from Pakistan. And one of the requirements of the K-1 fiancé visa is that the parties have met in person at least once sometime in the preceding 2 years, that if there is a police certificate available for good conduct and arrests and so forth, you have to produce that, and she should have done that, but I never saw any reference to it because it's available in Saudi Arabia. Additionally, with the fiancé visa, you can't possibly be married, and I saw one reference, and I don't know how true it was, the story keeps changing, that she had undergone a Muslim contract marriage in Saudi Arabia, which would have disqualified her for the fiancé.
With another man? Or with the man she ended up marrying?
With the same guy, this Syed...
Malik, who was from Chicago, just for clarification. He was an American. He was not, he's a Muslim, but he was from America.
So it's they have supposedly great controls, and the CIA is doing far more investigating on K-1 visas, for example, than in the past.
Well, do you believe we should check social media? Because on a social media site, I understood, if you had looked at that, you would have seen some references that you hated America.
Well, yes and no. I mean, the CIA does things like that. There are almost no controls on agency personnel abroad. But social media, who knows? I have friends who had Facebook pages created on social media, and they say they didn't do it themselves and had no idea who put those up. So with something like this, you don't know who is doing what.
Yeah, but if we would look at their social media site, at least we can question them before we let them come in the country, and she can deny it or prove that she wasn't a part of making the Facebook page or whatever.
Well, either this was a gross miscalculation on the part of the Central Intelligence Agency,
because the CIA works with you all, right? I think you told me that the CIA works with getting in every city. You work with CIA people to give out visas, right?
Well, the CIA has clandestine service officers stationed at most embassies and consulates around the world.
Yeah. So what other kind of visas are there? The K-1 is pretty easy to get. I guess you're marrying somebody, you meet all the qualifications. They ask you questions like, are you a terrorist, and things like that on there?
Oh, yeah. There's a whole section on security about what organizations you belong to, do you plan to come to the United States to overthrow the government, and so forth.
I mean, you got to be an idiot to say you are. I mean, so what good does that really do? You ask them, and you know they're lying, like we know she did. No one's going to put, I want to blow you up, unless we're really stupid who looks at the visas and lets them in anyway, right? I mean, that's kind of, they better redesign maybe some of the questions they're asking, or do a better job.
Well, they have personal interviews as well, and if you're an experienced consular officer, you can tell in just a couple of minutes what you've got in front of you, whether you've got somebody telling the truth, or somebody who is only telling part of the truth, or somebody who's outright lying to the officer.
I've got one more question, and then I'm going to let you go. Mike, when we have 500,000 people is what's being proven now in America that we know about, that we can't find, that have visas, that came in on visas. What do you think, how could we keep up better with, whether it's an educational visa, K-1 visa, whatever the visa is? They have time frames on it, right? How long you can stay?
Pretty much. When you're admitted to the United States, the immigration officer issues you an entry stamp with the duration of stay on it. In some cases, it might be 6 months. In some cases, it might be for as long as you're in service. Now, in Europe, they have internal controls. They have personal identity cards, and they check up on people. When you go to a hotel, you register, and the registrations are given to the police to check up on. The Americans somehow object to internal controls of any kind, yet are willing to accept outrageous intrusions on their privacy and their civil rights in the name of supposed security.
Us Americans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we have to have free will. We don't want security.
You know, as Marcy on the Whistleblower Summit, she put this together last year, and I met you, and I think my interview today is a direct result of Marcy's Whistleblower Summit and her efforts. Marcel Reed,
who I'm in fact, she and Mike McCrae. Next week I'll be doing a show with Mike, and Marcel was under the weather, he couldn't make it, but Mike just drove in from Arkansas, and Marcel is up, but we're going to talk about that. I met Marcel, I was a speaker at that conference because I've done shows on, veteran whistleblower Shay Wilkes out of Shreveport, who did a whistleblowing against the Veterans Administration in Shreveport for supposedly misscheduling, and 38 people died, 38 veterans. But I also met Marcel when I wrote a book, and she had done ACORN. Do people remember ACORN here? Mm-hmm. They were out of Louisiana. That was Association for Community Reform, now out of New Orleans. And they whistleblow on that. And President Obama was the legal arm of that. He was their lawyer. And but I'm doing a whole show on that. So yeah, we definitely met. That's how I met, and I got your book. And I'm supposed to, Andrew Craig, I think I met him there too. Yeah. And he wrote Presidential Puppetry, and it was a lot of good things. Some people, they talked about the water problem from Deepwater Horizon. But Mike, I'm going to have to close it out with you, and I thank you for being on here. And
well, I was honored, and I'm pleased to have the privilege of talking to your audience. Thank
you. We appreciate it, Mike. You gave us a lot of good information. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, he had quite a wealth of expertise. Well, Well, I think for Diane Andrews in black and white, is there anything what things do you, anything we see out of the regular, you think we just need to call the police? Or?
Start with the police, and then we can get it to where it needs to go, either if it needs to go federal, state, we can get it to the agencies that need to do it. Also have a plan. If you have a business or you have a workplace, if you do not have an evacuation plan or you have a plan for an active shooter in your business, get one developed.
What would you do for an active shooter? What would be the plan?
Well, it would depend on the building.
If he was in, okay.
But you know, the thing is, well, you know, running, we ask you to evacuate first.
Okay.
If you can get out of the building, get out of the building. If you can't get out of the building, then we ask you to lock yourself in a room, get under a desk, get under a cabinet, get under something that you can conceal yourself away. Turn your cell phone on vibrate or silent. That way, if it goes off, you don't alert the guy where you're at. And if you can dial 911, dial 911. Even if you can't talk, leave the line open.
Okay.
That way we can find you.
I saw that on Taken. On the movie Taken, they did that,
Just leave the line open and let us get to you. Remember that if you are involved in an active shooter, that law enforcement, once we get there, we are going to take the shooter out. That's our goal. We will deal with injuries and anything else after that, but our main goal once we get there is to stop the shooting.
Now, the guy in Lafayette, we had that recently, he killed himself, didn't he? Or did the police kill him? Okay. And he had mental illness. And like I said, that's why a lot of times we hear about shooters, and a lot of times it's a mental illness problem. At the end of every show, I do candle end of a lot of shows when I have time, that talked about something I saw as a little girl growing up in Marouge, Louisiana. And I saw this religious show that they would light a candle at the end of every show and say, if everyone lit just one little candle, what a bright world this would be. And I've tried to live my life trying to shine a light on others and to help others and trying to shine a light for myself. I'm like Donald Trump. I pay for this show myself as independent. So I can do what I want to do right now, I guess. I better not say that too quickly. But I do a lot of shows that may be controversial. But when I'm with Trump, when you're paying for it yourself, you do what you want to do, right? I mean, he's not beholden to anybody on what he says or does. Some things he says are kind of stupid, though. But I like a lot of things he does say. A lot of things, the way he says it, if you get under it, it's probably okay what he's trying to say. But not being a politician is a breath of fresh air. But anyway, if you would go out and shine a light and do what you can do in your life, as bad as your life may seem, it's always somebody who's in a bit worse shape than you are. And let's go out and give. You may not can give money, but you can give time or help somebody the way you can, even if it's assisting them across the street. Thank you. Bye-bye for Diane Andrews in black and white. See you next week.
Your host of Diane Andrews in Black and White, a statewide program and on YouTube. Watch us, you'll see an HIV positive person's journey. You'll hear us make a telephone call to a Shia Muslim in Baghdad, Iraq. You'll also see the vice president of Lamar Billboard Advertising come in and talk about how advertising can make you more successful. Come on and watch Diane Andrews in Black and White. You'll be happy you did.